All right, we are a go. YouTube streaming is a go.
Thank you.
Right, we are a go. YouTube streaming is a go.
Great. I want to thank you all for joining us tonight and wish you all a good evening. My name is Dwayne Rose. I'm the Division Chief in the H Directorate for Recruiting and Retention. Um, One of the ways we can help meet our objectives for all of us to get new members and retain current members is to offer training that will support the knowledge that our team, U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary, needs, and that's why we're here tonight. Tonight's training is on best practices and the recently rewritten 7001 new auxiliary member application. Um, we also have two additional presentations that will follow this later this year, and they'll be receiving more information on that in the coming weeks. The second presentation we're going to have will be critical forms, especially the 7035. That's the change in membership status, where when we get to the point where we do need to disenroll someone, or they haven't paid their dues, or they want to retire, or even transfer, we use that form. Not a complicated form, but an easy one to make mistakes on. I've been there myself. So um, just for those of you that don't know, we're doing these trainings a little bit different than in the past. For purposes of delivery, we've divided all the districts, Coast Guard auxiliary districts, into three: uh, in the Eastern region, Central region, and the Pacific region. Tonight, we're doing the alternate date for the Eastern region. The reason that we're using YouTube is we've never had training audiences as big as we're doing for these meetings. Um, so that will enable us to have a cleaner meeting. We do miss the fact that we can have an interactive experience, but we're sacrificing that and be able to get training out faster with fewer presentations of it. In the YouTube description or topic, you'll see underneath the presentation screen, the last sentence includes a link to a form you can use to submit questions. And we've been getting those, and I encourage you to use those. And if that doesn't work for you, you can also email me. Um, but we'd really like to get your questions and see what you thought of the meeting. Um, we think it's going pretty well, but we're learning from these, and we'll fine tune as we go along. So at this time, let's just get underway. Your presenter is Rio Annis. He's a branch chief in my same division. He is also a division commander, a DSOHR, an SOHR, an FSOHR. And I've been the division commander, and I currently share the same HR offices that Rio does. He's also an FSO, Marine Safety. But anyway, introduction's done. Let's get going so we can get you out of here on time. So thank you all for coming.
Okay, you give me a moment here, and I'll share screen and bring up the presentation. Okay, perfect. All right, here we go. So session one, as Dwayne said, it's best practices. And we're going to cover a little bit about initial contact with a prospect, and then go through the process with the new member application, and then some fine points on a new member application. So effectively utilizing best practices in HR. Does it matter? Well, yeah, it absolutely does. The more we know how to do this, the better we are, better experience it is for, the new applicant that wants to join. So is it rocket scientist or rocket science? Well, not really, but just knowing the process and being comfortable with it makes it so much easier. Getting into it first time, not knowing what's going on. Maybe you're brand new to the HR position altogether, and so you don't know what you're supposed to do. Well, sure, that's going to be kind of frustrating maybe, but as you learn what the job is and how to do it, you'll find it actually is fairly easy. And we want to welcome all the HR officers and want you to know that, this position is extremely important. Although it's not a glamorous position like, being surface operations or air ops or, anything else that might be working side by side with active duty, we're still highly important in this function. We're kind of behind the scenes, but what we do with new people and getting them in efficiently and effectively, giving them a good experience goes a long way. And if we don't do our jobs to the best of our ability with, real true energy and engagement, those people may not make it out to the glamorous job of being on the water or in the air or many of the other functions that we do serving with the Coast Guard. You'll find that we will continue to be the go-to people in HR for these new prospects, these new members, even for years, farther on in their career in the auxiliary. No matter what, they get into, they're going to ask you maybe questions about, what to do on a particular thing. And even if you don't know the answer, we certainly can find a way to guide them to where they need to go to get the answer. All of us together are our team Coast Guard. Just wanted to let you know, this presentation note, we are providing this training from the Directorate, from the national view. And many of you invited here tonight are from various districts, and there are definitely some nuances between districts and our diaroxes. So we're doing a generalized training that does cover some specifics, but there might be some areas that maybe isn't exactly the way you do it in your district. So definitely you want to check with your chain of leadership on that. So what we're going to cover, as I mentioned before, is the initial contact, some vital interview points, the application process, follow-up next steps, and then the actual application completion, hopefully covering all the fine points. Some of those, some people have a little difficulty with, or they may not know what exactly to do, or they might be common mistakes that people, frequently, run across. So an initial contact with a prospect, really almost anyone you meet could be a potential auxiliary member. It could be somebody at one of your church groups or at some other function that you're at. If they find out that you're in the auxiliary and they hear some of the stories you tell about the fun things that you do, they may become interested. So you definitely want to get their name and email, phone number, and share yours as well. Obviously, you want to be enthusiastic and friendly, and helpful and reliable, when you're going to have that back and forth conversation with them. We want to also respond quickly to all communications, even those from the AAMS system, which is the Auxiliary Applicant Management System. You want to make every effort, answer inquiries, and be available. The preferred response would be easily within 24 hours or 48 hours. We don't want to have somebody send us an email or a text and not be, respectful and respond to them in a timely manner. Before in-person meetings with prospects, notify your flotilla commander. This would be the same as if you were heading out to the shoreline to do vessel exams or in your community doing program visits. Anything where you're heading out to do a mission or work on behalf of the Coast Guard or the auxiliary, you would notify your flotilla commander so that they know that you are actually heading out to do that job. And that is because when you are out doing auxiliary work, you are covered through insurance as if you were active duty member. And you'll find this in the ops manual. So we want you to remember that you're probably a prospect's first contact. So it's really important that you make a good impression. You should really be wearing a Coast Guard auxiliary uniform for meetings and be groomed properly. I mean, we're representing not only the auxiliary, but in the public, we're representing the active duty as well. So we always want to be looking professional. Suggest possibly attending a flotilla meeting or an auxiliary event. My preference would be an auxiliary event first, because it's something more exciting, more active. It could be a public affairs at a boat show. It could be, doing vessel exams. Something where they can see how we do a job, how do we interact with the public. Flotilla meetings would be fine. I would say as long as there's some activity that is engaging and fun, more fellowship. As well as I do, some flotilla meetings are kind of boring at times if people are just reading their reports. And that would not be a good first impression for a, potential new member. We want them to experience, us doing, fun activities. Definitely do not express any negative opinions of other flotillas. And you might be aware of some other flotillas and things that you disagree with, but you never want to share that with a potential new member. Even though you're speaking of another flotilla, the fact that you are speaking negatively would not cast, a very good impression of the auxiliary as a whole. You always want to make decisions based on a prospect's best interest. Now, maybe based on their interest, their skills, or some other criteria, another flotilla might suit them better. So it's more important that they join the auxiliary. It's nice if they join your flotilla, but the ultimate goal is for them to join the auxiliary. The recruit sale will always look to you to be a mentor and a guide. And as I said before, that will probably continue for quite some time. We want to be, very complete in how we do an interview. Of course, we want to find out about this new person, their skills, their interests, education, and, their backgrounds. But we also want to tell them about us. This is going to be a two-way, match. They're going to want to know whether they're going to feel good and fit with us properly. So it is a two-way thing. We want to cover everything we can so that there's no surprises to them once they become a member. So definitely mention the mandatory core training and any other required training. Sometimes I bring my laptop and I will show them through different sites, what this training might look like. Talk about commitment and satisfaction of service and auxiliary requirements, including technology and reports. We know that some members may come to us and they might not be really computer literate. Well, we want them to know that up front. So again, it's not a surprise later on. We do want people to know about reports. Obviously, submitting reports shows our activity, and that helps support the active duty, especially when they're trying to go through the budget process. We want to check and see if this prospect has a certificate or card for a NASBA approved safe boating course. Be done later. I do, of course, try to have my new prospect take a boating safety course while they're going through the application process. And there's different ways of doing that. They can go online to do that. I could personally teach them. I'm an instructor as well. If you're not, that's fine. Maybe you've got an instructor in your flotilla that can teach them one-on-one, go through a boating safety course. Definitely want to share the personal cost, including uniforms, dues, personal transportation, and also the uniform and grooming standards. Again, we want them not to be surprised about anything. So they're not enlisting in active duty. So no uniforms are provided. So we want to clear up any confusion right at the beginning. We can talk about ID cards. You can show them yours so you can see what it looks like. If you like, you could take a photo for the future submission for an ID card. First time prospects won't have a uniform, but if you have a trop shirt, you could loan them. You could take a photo with a red background and just hold it till later. So we definitely like to share the Coast Guard story. We do save lives. We might not know it all the time. Like teaching a boating safety class. We'll never know whether anybody in that class, might have had a good experience based on what we taught them and avoided any kind of, bad experience on the water. All right. Okay, the new application process. Must use current version of the new member application. The only place to go get that would be on the Forms Warehouse. You might download it. Well, you would download it to your computer and then bring it up and use it, and all the drop-down boxes should work properly. However, a month from now, you won't want to use that same one on your laptop or your desktop because the form may have changed by then. So each time you have a new application for somebody to fill out, you'll always want to go to that Forms Warehouse. And there's the link for it there. Also, just below the application, enrollment application, you'll see that there's instructions for enrollment application. These are pretty good instructions. And you can also open that up and check that out as you're filling it out or helping the applicant fill it out. The new application, which is version 02-25, February 2025, is really a pretty good update. They've got a lot more drop downs, a little less chance for error on some of these sections. We want to have the applicant review the new member student study guide and take the exam, which is open book. And it can also be done online, which is really the preferred method for doing it. And that study book and a new member exam can be found on the Human Resources Directorate site. It's under the new member class section. When a new member takes this exam, the results will actually email to them. And they can then email you the results. And then you'll have that for completing that section on the application. It can be done in paper form as well. And you can do the grading, by using the answer sheet that is on the Directorate site. You have to log into new member resources to get at that. However, the new member won't have access to those answers. You can inform the member of any incorrect answers, but if they really need to retake the whole test because they didn't pass it, we don't really want to give out all the correct answers. They should just reread through the new member study guide and try it again. There are 30 multiple choice questions and passing score is 80. This kind of shows the Directorate website, and right here on the left side where it's new member class, that will bring up this screen where you can see the new member study guide and the new member online exam. When your prospect just clicks on those links, it'll open it right up for them. You do have the option to collect initial dues at the time you're meeting with the new member. And you'll want to make sure that the payment is sent to your FSO-FN. But you can verify with your chain of leadership. It's not, although this says recommended, you definitely want to check with your district and see how that is handled. You can get dues later. I know sometimes in the past I've had people ask whether this is an application fee, and no, it is not. It's kind of like you will get a bill from the district once the new member actually gets their employee ID number, and it's prorated based on the time of year quarterly when they join. Some flotillas do collect that from the new member. Some flotillas do not. They let it go. The fingerprint technician, citizenship verifier, or law enforcement officer reviews a passport card or passport with signature, or original or certified birth certificate with grade seal, and approved government photo ID. Reviewed a social security card. Get required copies for the application. You do not copy the social security card though. You just need to look at it and that's it. You don't need to send a copy of it with the application. If they do have that voter safety certificate, you want to take note of that on the application. There is a section for it, for the date and what type of course. You want to make sure that the new member application package is shared with the flotilla commander as soon as possible. Their signature is an endorsement, not just signing. They really are expected to review the application, making sure it is correct and accurate and complete. So it's just, they're just not signing it just to sign it. Also, you want to make sure that you're timely in getting your application done with the new member. If this extends out for a couple months or more, it is possible that a new member application might have been updated to a new version. And unfortunately, you would need to change to a new version before sending it in. So we want to try to get this application package done as quickly as possible. The Auxiliary Association membership is required, but it's now built into the new application. So there's no longer a need for that previous AUX 10 form. You want to call potential members as frequently as appropriate. We know that some people, they kind of, lose track. Maybe they've got a full-time job and they're putting in, a lot of hours at work, or they're a full-time student and they kind of get lost in their studying or whatever. So we just want to kind of keep up with them and not let this sit off to the side. If they're really interested, we want to keep that going. Want to also update that AAMS system. If your prospect came by way of the online inquiry and they're in the system, you want to make sure you make notes on that. This system will only keep these potential members in the system for 60 days. So you'll want to make notes so it kind of resets that clock frequently. Otherwise, they'll drop out of that system and there's no way to recover them from that. You can still recruit them, you just won't be able to get them finished up through that system. And we want to use that system as much as we can if that's where the prospect came from. Unless the recruit says that they're not joining, you want to continue contacting them for at least 3 months. Let's not give up on them just because they kind of like let this fall off the plate for a little bit. We want to try to, keep that interest going if that's possible. Send meeting reminders 3 days prior to the next meeting. Well, hopefully that is just a reminder. Hopefully we've already sent them meeting notice at least a couple weeks earlier with the agenda and meeting minutes, as we do all members. Check the progress with their paperwork, see if they have any questions or concerns. Well, that would be part of that, continual follow-up that we have with them, trying to keep that interest going. Some people do have a tough time with commitment, so we want to try to get that commitment for steps required in the application process. If they need to get a social security card, and I've had a few people who didn't have it, so they needed to apply and get a new one. Or if they're taking a new member exam, find out what's the holdup with that, because it should be a pretty easy thing to do to get that done. So now we're on to the application itself and some of these fine points. First thing you always want to do, as I mentioned, go get your application from the forms warehouse. And you'll see at the top left corner here, it'll tell you what version it is. So you always want to make sure you're working with the newest version. For the name, some people do not have a middle name. So you would just use NMN, which means no middle name. The suffix over on the right here, some people might be a junior or senior, second, third, something like that. That is a suffix. If they don't have one, then just leave it blank. No need to put in NA. And don't want some people to be confused with what suffix is. It's not a prefix, such as Mr. or Mrs. For the occupation codes, I know you can't hardly see it on screen here. They're very pale boxes. There's 3 of them. They're drop-down boxes, so they're easy to find an occupation code. You can do one. It's not necessary to have the applicant do all 3. And if they don't do any all, that's okay too. The application will still be accepted. You'll see here on the left, this is a box for checking yes or no whether they have a voting safety course. And very important here, which came back on the newest version of the application. Again, we have the weight, height, eye color, and hair color. These are drop-down boxes as well, except for the weight and the height. Height is inches only. 5 foot 5 inches is 65. We don't put in fractions or any decimals. It is just whole inches only. A little lower down on page 1, you'll find other information here regarding their address and other information, contact information. For their address, we still want to try to put in that zip code +4. And if they do leave that off, it is easy enough to find. I often add that to an application after I receive it. I found that this zip code lookup by this website here works really, really easy. So I just add that in. As far as emergency contact, It is required, at least I found it was in my district. So make sure that is filled out. It should not be someone that's living with the prospect, but it could be if that's all that they have. Could be a husband-wife situation. In my DIROCs, they've not rejected any that were husband-wife situation. Page 2, talk about military service. If they've not had military service, easy enough, mark no. If they have, yes. And then we have a lot of drop downs here on this new application for the branch, the status, pay grades, everything across there. For those members who have prior military service but don't have a DD-214, I have found this website here for the archives.gov Veterans Military Service Records to be pretty good. I've used it personally, and I think I had results in the mail within a couple of weeks. In fact, I checked an extra box online when I was submitting for that, and it also sent ribbons. If their service was National Guard only without activation, then they'll only have an NGB 22, which is similar to a DD-214. If they were National Guard that was activated to the active Army, then they will actually have a DD-214. But if that's not the case, then they'll just have the NGB 22. So we would need a copy of that. A little lower down here on the form, who is responsible for recruiting you into the auxiliary? It's not a drop-down box, so it's kind of a fill-in. You'll add the person's name from your flotilla or the HR person, whoever it was, along with their division and flotilla number. This section here on the background check is less boxes than it was on a previous application version. It's now just one box, yes or no. So it's pretty easy to deal with there. The applicant would then also just initial down on these two lines. Now, if they've had previous criminal history of some sort, they do need to submit a separate sheet of paper listing all arrest charges or other convictions. And if there's any doubt at all whether their situation requires reporting, I would go with yes. Have them go ahead and report it and let the DIROCs decide whether it's relevant or not. Failure to report it and then DIROCs finds about it could be cause for denial, assuming that they were not truthful on the application. So we don't want to be in a situation of thinking about whether their situation is serious enough or not. We just go with yes and have them explain it. If they have any court documentation for the disposition of the case, they should submit that too. The more information, the better it is for DIROCs to make a proper decision on it. Page 3, section 3 and 4. Obviously, if somebody's under 18 years of age, we want to have the parent or guardian sign off for them. Then the applicant will read down through here, pledge and signature, and they'll sign here and date it. You'll see here on section 4, it talks about the Coast Guard Auxiliary Association. So this is where they're acknowledging that they are being accepted into that. And clicking on the blue links here, you'll be able to read what that's about, or they will be able to read what that's about. So now we're on page 4, and we're working with their citizenship documentation. So they would obviously check yes if they're a U.S. citizen. Here's where you'll check the box that you've reviewed their Social Security card. And then down here, we've got the passport. Expired passports are acceptable. They just then need to show enclose or include also a copy of their federal or state photo ID, such as a driver's license. So as I mentioned before, we don't make a copy of the Social Security card. We don't send that along with the application. So you just need to review that, and that's it. However, we will send in a copy of the passport and a driver's license or a birth certificate. So if they don't have a passport, then you'll need to do one item from list B and one item from list C. Most commonly, that would be a driver's license from list B, and from list C, most commonly a birth certificate. You'd send in a copy of both of those. And the people who review this and will sign off at the bottom will be your fingerprint technician, your citizenship verifier, or law enforcement officer. Page 5. So we want to check whatever boxes are appropriate. Obviously, if this is new employment, you'll check that. If it is a re-enrollment, you'll check that box, but then you'll need to add some extra information from where were they previously enrolled. Do you have their ID number? It is possible you can find it in Aux Data 2. Want to make sure pretty much all of these are completed. Whether they comply with the Coast Guard tattooing, body marking, and body piercing policies. This blue link here will take you to that policy. If they are current youth or adult member of the Boy Scouts or Sea Scouts, you check this box. If not, you can leave it blank. Next box down is for the new member exam. So this is where you put in the date and their score. Or have read through the Privacy Act statement, so you check that box. Here's where you'll record your boating safety certificate information. So the date of certificate and issued by who. Could be Boat Ed or, which is most common, I think through all 50 states. That's the basis for most of the education. Citizenship status verified. Yep, check that box because you did that. If they were prior military and you have that DD-214 or the NGB-22, you'll check this box. If not, leave it blank. You did review the arrest charges, convictions with their initials, so you check that box. And then you'll check the box for the consent to initial background. If they did say yes on the previous criminal charges, they're submitting that separate sheet of paper. You'll check that box. And if they're going to be supporting the Coast Guard unit, immediately, we'll want to check the boxes here regarding previous security clearance. And as you know that we haven't for some years needed fingerprints. So that's still the case. We don't do fingerprints anymore. This is kind of like an interview. You could use this when you're doing your first interview with a new applicant. This will help you stay on course with covering all those things that we want to make sure are covered with the prospect so there's no surprises. This definitely will be a good guide for you on that. But it doesn't hurt at the time of signing that you're running through these again with them and making sure all these boxes are checked. The last box at the bottom is about the Coast Guard Auxiliary Association. Well, that's kind of a repeat of what we saw on another page. So you check that one again. Section 6. This is where we have the interviewer, and maybe it was the flotilla commander or the HR person. they would check and sign here that they were the ones that interviewed the person. I know in some flotillas there it's not an HR person, so that's kind of a default to the flotilla commander. Then secondly, we have the applicant signature here. And then we have the flotilla commander. And as I mentioned before, flotilla commander is not merely signing this form. They are verifying that everything in this application package is complete and accurate. And section 9 is for DIROCs only. So I didn't even put that on here because there's nothing on there for you to fill out. So some additional notes. Applications are always to be submitted single-sided. DIROCs, at least in my district, will not accept them double-sided, so make sure they're always single-sided. Also verify with your chain of leadership whether blue ink is a requirement. It used to be in District 9, but now we're okay with either blue or black. So definitely want to check with your chain of leadership on that. Be aware of signatures with stale dates. You know, we talked previously about, you know, people setting time commitments with getting their application done, getting the new member exam done, if they had to get a social security card or whatever the case may be. This could extend things out for a few months. So we want to make sure signatures on our application are fresh. If they're 2-3 months old, you're better off just having a re-signing and redating. So there's no chance it might be rejected at DIROCs. Currently only need one set of paperwork. I know in years past we used to have to send in 2 sets of paperwork, so that's no longer the case. Some districts may email these to their DIROCs. That's a different situation. I know in mine, we are mailing in physical paperwork to our Director of Auxiliary. But I highly suggest that you keep a copy until a processing is complete, and then you can get rid of it afterwards once they're accepted. On the off chance that something goes missing before it gets to Director of Auxiliary, you've got a copy on hand. It's easy enough to, you know, send that in afterwards without having to redo the entire package all over again. Remember that AUX 10, the consent to membership, is now built into the application, so we don't need that form anymore. Again, I mentioned fingerprints no longer required, but they might be later on, depending on a qualification. And I mentioned earlier that there are instructions for filling out the application. They are pretty comprehensive, and I think it really helps out a lot. And they are found in the forms warehouse just below where you found the application. Review the application package and review it again. And if possible, use somebody else to proof it. Myself, when I get them in the mail from all my flotillas, I review it, and then basically I'll set it down, and then an hour or so later I'll pick it up and re-look at it again, making sure that I didn't miss something, you know, on my first look. I want to make sure that they are perfect when I am sending them into the Director of Auxiliary, so that there's no chance that, you know, there's any delay. Who do you send the packet to? You definitely want to verify that with your chain of leadership. District 9, as I'm the DSOHR, all the packets get sent to me, but that might be different in your district. So you definitely want to make sure you know where they're supposed to go. A note on postage materials. I know that there are some HR people and some flotilla commanders that don't know that they can get postage materials through their MA. So contact your FSO MA and have them order stamps and envelopes for you. It's free, so you don't need to spend your own money or flotilla's money on that. Priority mail is faster and includes tracking. You can use that. It's not required. It's just a good idea. But again, verify with your chain of leadership. So we never want to fail to pursue a prospect lead. Always follow up. Be a broken record. Ask the prospect, referrals. Never respond. Nothing to report at monthly meetings. We always have something to report. And I know it seems a lot that the HR person is kind of like the responsible person for recruiting new members, but really that responsibility falls onto all members of the flotilla. Everybody is a recruiter because everybody knows people out in the public. It could be, like say a Rotary Club, a Lions Club, a church association, or just being out at the shoreline doing vessel exams or teaching a public education class. We got many members that are out in the public doing various activities. Who knows who they might meet? That could be a new member. So everybody is responsible for recruiting. Last thing, remember, we recruit, we mentor, we retain, and we repeat. So we spend a lot of time recruiting somebody, getting them into the whole application process. And that's not the end of the job. We have to continue with that new person, mentoring them to get them through the training they have to go through, learning the computer system, Aux Data 2, doing reports, ordering their uniforms. So we always want to keep contact with them and keep working with them through the system. And that's the way we retain people, is continually working with them and making sure that they are part of the group. I know that at the end of the year, we wind up with several people that leave the auxiliary. And unfortunately, mentoring is mostly the problem. They just all of a sudden felt like they were no longer welcome. They weren't getting the answers they were looking for. And then they just kind of drop off and or just stop communicating altogether. So we definitely want to stay with this person. The energy we put in recruiting, we have to maintain that energy through the mentoring. That's the only way we're going to retain people. So as Dwayne mentioned early on, there's a form that you can use for filling out questions about this presentation. And I want to make sure that I let you know that when you are spending time recruiting somebody, helping them get through the application process and all that, fill out a 7030 and use code 90C for auxiliary recruiting. So I want to make sure that you are recording your time for that. Also, you could do it through the Aux Data 2 system. And for sitting in on this session here, this is training that you're receiving. So on your 7029, you want to use the code 99D. Or again, do that through Aux Data 2. So here's my contact information, as well as Dwayne Roost's contact information. If you do have any other questions or comments about the training. Otherwise, I appreciate you sitting in on this training tonight. Thank you.
I'd just like to thank everyone for joining us tonight. You probably all know what CV is, a citizenship verifier. That's always been on the application, and years ago there actually were citizenship verifiers. That's actually coming back, and there are some districts right now that may approve you being a citizenship verifier. I have that. Years ago I took the fingerprint exam, but I never finished doing the fingerprints. And now most of the time we don't need fingerprints. Sometimes we do. But they are bringing that position back because a lot of hotels don't have fingerprint technicians, and citizenship verifiers could make it a lot faster, to get your applications done. So just that is in process. It's actually been in process for a while. There will be a different PQS for that than there were for fingerprint technicians. So just kind of keep an eye out for that. I just did want to mention you shouldn't email applications because there's a wealth of personal information in there. And with the previous application, we could password protect it. Like we could password protect it, set a password for it, and you might send it the application to somebody, send them a second email with the password, no other information, just that, and then they could open it. But I just wanted to mention on the new application, I tried password protecting one recently, and it did not work. And I think it will work, but they're doing a lot of work on the application yet, I think. And I think that will be coming because that's a really handy thing to be able to you know pass on an application without worry of the PII getting violated. So, uh, but I really want to thank you for coming. I want to thank Rio for doing this presentation. He really does a great job with it. And a lot of this information is really important. Um, you can access the presentation with the same link that you used to get here tonight. And then, as we mentioned, um, there's a question thing form you can fill out. And if you have any problem with that or just want to email us, you can do that as well. Either way, we will get back to you. So, again, thanks for coming, and any questions down the road, please let us hear from you. Thanks
I'd like to
again.
add one additional point. For flotillas that have, members pretty spread out or your prospect is not close to you, if you could do like a Zoom link with the person, you can review their application that way. So that will work. And then you get a full view of it. So, you can't email it, but you can do that.
I do a similar thing to that. Sometimes I use Zoom, like I'll have them do the first draft in the application, and we can do Zoom and share our screens and complete the application. And that way, it's never been transmitted. So, that's one way to do it. So everybody kind of figures out what works for them. Just keep it within the guidelines and the standards. And a new member should know everything about us that we need, and vice versa, so we can make a good decision on for both of us. Um, that's all I have. And thanks again, Rio. And thanks for coming, everyone.
Okay.
Good night.